What's going on, guys? This is Oliver, formerly from Response AI, and now obviously from a few different projects, Tricombe.com, getseer.com. Listen, guys, obviously 5,000 subs, really thankful for the growth of this channel. And just to get straight into it, guys, today we're going to be talking about free trials, right? So when you're building your software, deciding whether or not to have a free trial is pretty make or break, because it will affect how you market your software in the first couple of months of the actual launch, you know. Now, in general, the decision to offer a free trial isn't just like a pricing tactic. It's kind of a reflection really on your product's kind of intrinsic value. So in other words, what people deem valuable about your tool, or whether it's even valuable at all, you know. So it comes down to the user psychology, the value they get from the product, that kind of thing. Now, basically, it's not as binary now as like free trial versus paid upfront, right? There's different sort of like hybrid models, things like that we'll talk about today. If we unpack this with case studies, actual data from companies that have made, millions of dollars, and frameworks that sort of bridge that theory and explain what you can do, right? My personal view is that you probably should have a free trial. So, in terms of how this video is going to go, I think you should have a free trial, but it's just about understanding why. So the value equation, right? So immediate versus compound value, guys, right? So at the heart of the free trial debate lies this question, which is how quickly does your product, so your SaaS, how quickly does it deliver value to the customer, right? So immediate value products are, tools that I consider to be tools that you log into and you get the immediate value, right? So let's assume you log into Zoom after paying $139, whatever it is for the year. You immediately get to video conference your 200 employees, right? With Comb, my tool to get access to a list of startups, you see how that's immediately valuable. So you log in and you just get the data, right? It doesn't matter what you do with the data. You don't have to put any effort in. You just get it. So that is what I consider two tools that have immediate value, right? Users pay up front because the return on investment is obvious. I pay $39 and I post, I host a call, whatever it may be. There's no ambiguity, right? The cognitive load of evaluation for that price, for that buying decision is low, right? So does this tool do what it claims, or do I get this thing, right? These products thrive on upfront pricing because the value exchange is instantaneous and it's measurable, right? So if I pay X, I will get Y. Now, compounded value tools, so an example would be like Salesforce or my other software, which is Seer. They require time and effort to unlock the full potential, right? So in other words, Salesforce, guys, it demands a hell of a lot of setup, right? So you've got CRM setup, importing data, onboarding your team and that kind of thing. And only then, say 3 months down the line, depending on the company's sales cycle, maybe they won't get a sale with Salesforce for that long. And you think what? They've paid and they still haven't gotten value from it, even if all their data's on there, right? So you see how this is a compounded value. The more effort you put in, the more value you get later. It's not immediate. Seer, which is my tool that is like a Reddit lead gen tool. It sort of drip feeds you leads over days and weeks, right? It requires users to refine filters and engage with the platform and add things and add data, right? Now, for these products, free trials aren't really optional, right? They're sort of survival mechanisms. So users need proof of long-term return on investment, and the trials mitigate that perceived risk, guys, right? So an example for my software Seer is that I don't know if there's going to be leads for you on the product, because it depends on how you configure the product, right? So if I ask you for $50 up front with no trial, you're in this position where you've just paid the $50. One, to be honest, my conversion rate is going to be much lower because conversion rates of upfront payments are lower. People are going to think about it, guys. People are going to go on a trial more than they're going to pay up front, right? It's going to be more likely that they'll become a customer, right? So for these products, the free trials are essential because it mitigates that risk. So in essence, if someone logs into my software and they don't get what they want, they can just cancel. But I'm not going to have to go through that rigmarole of refunding them or having a problem because they didn't know what value they'd get because it's not immediate. And then, they might either be happy or unhappy. If they're unhappy, they just cancel and it's fine. Now, the distinction isn't arbitrary, right? So it's rooted in how users perceive effort versus reward. So there was a ProfitWell study that found that a delayed aha moment, which is when someone logs in, guys, to a software and they go, oh, like that's cool, If it's a delayed aha moment, there's a 40% higher conversion rate for free trials, right? But for instant value tools, upfront pricing filters out skeptics, right? And it reinforces commitment. So people are going to get onto the tool and immediately get value, and it's going to filter out. If I tell you that you have to pay up front, I'm not going to get as many customers, but I'm going to get real customers who are in it to win it and who want skin in the game, So in other words, if you want to have a free trial, you've got to make sure that value is being built, right? It also doesn't make sense to give a free trial to someone who's going to get immediate value because they'll just take the value or download it or whatever and then leave. You get what I mean? So it's important that your value equation, do they get value immediately or do they get value in a week's time? That is what depends on whether you choose a free trial or not, right? So psychological warfare. So the hidden forces of payment and trust, right? So payment is almost like a psychological contract, right? So sunk cost bias. It's a concept popularized by Nassim Taleb's Skin in the Game, right? Which explains why users who pay up front stick around even when they're frustrated with a product, right? And that gives an entrepreneur, someone who built the SaaS, it gives them an opportunity to help via support and customer success and that kind of thing, right? So they've invested money, and walking away, guys, feels like admitting waste of some sort, So an example is a really great company. They make millions a year. It's called Basecamp. They leverage this really well, right? So they don't have a free trial, but they just have this 30-day refund window, right? So you pay up front, but if you're unhappy in 30 days, they gladly and happily, and you can try it yourself, they just give you the money back, right? So users commit up front, and then the sunk cost effect reduces churn. So in other words, because someone is paid up front, they're going to stick it out until they get value, because people don't want to pay and then get nothing. People want to pay and then get what they want in the end, even if it requires some effort. And you'll see that if you make someone pay $19 up front, the amount of effort they'll end up putting in long term is much lower than if they pay $485, because the more effort you put in is directly equated to how much money you paid in the first place. So an example is if I buy a pair of walking boots for $300, it's much more likely that I'm going to wear them in, work on them, sort of like go on more trips with them, than if I just don't like them after a few walks if they were $20. Like, I'm going to stick with the product that was more expensive, and I'm going to attempt to get my value out of it. Now, obviously, this backfires if the product value isn't immediate, right? So a case study from my own software, my previous software before I exited it, Response AI, we learned this the hard way, right? So we charged up front for an AI prospecting tool, like a video tool, that required like 40 to 50 minutes of setup, guys, right? So recording videos, uploading leads, finding leads, because we added leads to the platform, whatever, configuring campaigns, setting up, schedules, that kind of thing, right? Early adopters. So when we first, our first sort of run at it in the first couple of months, we were churning pretty quickly because people would buy it up front and then they would just think, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing here, right? They paid up front, but the value was delayed, right? So they are paying to then have to work. And like that's a tough pill to swallow, guys. If you're on a free trial, you're happy to work because you know that there's time that is going to elapse between you starting the product and then having to pay, right? But if your product isn't immediately valuable and people have to put effort in and they've just paid, you are making someone pay to work, right? Which is a really big problem and can cause massive strain, right? Switching to a free trial for Response Response AI, it forced us to redesign the onboarding experience, right? And in the end, it made us build a better product, right? So we added pre-built templates. So AI generated scripts, progress bars tracking their progress and how many results they got, daily email nudges that reminded users, you're almost there. You just have to do this and that, complete it to get started and that kind of thing, right? The result is that trial conversions doubled and churn dropped to about 12, sometimes sort of on the higher end of 12 to 15%, right? So what that meant is that in understanding that we were charging too much up front, in fact, charging at all up front for people who then had to log in and configure it without our help, it required us to do some soul searching. We were like, okay, one, we're not going to charge people up front, and two, we're going to make sure they get value before the trial is ended. Then, once they've got that result that they wanted from the trial, they can just be like, oh, I either got what I wanted or I didn't, so I can either convert or I don't. I can go into the help settings, the billing settings of the app and just cancel if I want. But if I don't, then I'll just get charged. And we found that this was really, really good because people often did get the value that they needed after we helped them a bit, and then they just converted into a paid user after the 7-day trial, right? Now, the economic realities, guys, of free trials, right? Free trials aren't free for you, right? So if your SaaS relies on costly APIs, we've had a video talking about this, about APIs and making sure costs are managed and that kind of thing, right? Every inactive trial user, that doesn't end up converting into a sale, it does bleed money if you are relying on APIs like OpenAI and Amazon Web Services, that kind of thing, right? So take my SaaS SEA, right? So getSEA.com. Each trial for me costs around $2 in API fees, right? And that's okay. I can manage that. I'm signing up a couple hundred people a month, and I understand that, a fair amount of those people are going to convert. So around 70 to 80% of those people are going to convert into a $19 per month plan, right? So if either the conversion, guys, was lower, so if my conversion was like 30%, which is sort of like below the industry standard, 70% is high for the industry standard is what I see. With Response, we saw about 50 to 60%. If either the conversion was lower or the costs were higher, so it costed me, $18 in API fees, which is ridiculous, the model would collapse. So I couldn't profitably get free trial users because the people who did convert would just get me somewhere, but the people who didn't convert are just costing me way too much. Do you see what I mean? So you've got to make sure that if your tool costs a lot up front, then it's hard to say, do you consider charging up front if it's going to cost you pretty much immediately? It is ballsy of me to, provide a free trial when it's costing me, but I know that if 1,000 people signed up, around 500 to 700 of them would convert, and I would lose, for example, if we lost 500 people or 300 people, it would have costed me $600. But if 500 people convert into a $19 plan, then you know that we're sort of in a space of I suppose relative either break even or some profit, right? So that's how that works really in practice, and that's why you should probably aim to have a high free trial conversion if your tool costs to give a free trial. Now, hybrid models offer a middle ground, right? So reverse trials, which is paid first, refund later. Ahrefs, which is like an SEO tool, it charges like $7 for a 7-day trial, right? Which is a bit weird, right? So it filters non-serious users. It does. It filters people who aren't serious whilst also minimizing loss. So it'd almost be like me for SEA charging $2 for a trial. I'm not going to do that. It seems pretty complex to do that. It's going to reduce how many people get on my tool and try it out. But you see how this is quite an interesting model, right? Canva lets free users design graphics, but then when it comes to to sort of like exporting all the graphics, it gates that and says you have to pay. So they are understanding that people are getting value from the tool, but the ultimate value, which is like downloading your content, they gate that with paid. So that's almost like the freemium model where people get loads and loads and loads. And then, like, for example, it would be like if Netflix said, like, you can watch 10 movies a month, but for free, but then you have to pay, right? That won't work for them. If it worked for them, they'd be doing it already, right? But you see how you are gating the full value with some value. And people work really well with this. You've got APIs and stuff out there that will give you free 1,000 credits, right? Or like, sales tools that give you 1,000 credits or one free seat, whatever it may be, right? Like, it is pretty complicated. I don't recommend that. I'm just saying that's a way that people do it. They gate the big value and keep you on the small value, right? Instant gratification layer. So OpenAI offers $10 in free API credits, right? So it hooks developers who later then go and get budget for the whole thing. So an example is when I started with OpenAI with ChatGPT, I was in like this free plan with $10 in credits. And once I built something, I was like, oh, damn, I'm going to need more credits for this. So I ended up buying, $1,000 in credits a month, whatever it may be. These models, like, they balance acquisition costs with delivering the value. So for high margin products, trials are sustainable. But if you have a really cheap product, like it's like $7 after the trial, a free trial into like a $10 product, that's difficult, man. Like, that's hard work for you to become profitable, because you're paying people to use it. And then when they convert into a customer, it's not even that much, Response, people would use it and then convert into like a $99 trial. No, a $99 customer. It's like, oh, a trial definitely works then, because if they convert, we're going to make a lot of money. Upfront pricing or usage limits, they're lifelines, experiment with them, but I personally don't recommend usage-based pricing or usage-based thingy, right? So, wow, I actually don't have an image on this slide for the first time ever. There's no image on this slide, right? I think it's just disappeared, or it's just behind something, right? So your pricing model reflects your philosophy as a founder, right? So realists, they prioritize revenue to fund the innovation. So in other words, you get money so that you can do better stuff, and you can spend more on marketing, and you can hire more support teams and things like that, right? So Basecamp, they charge up front, which attracts committed users, and they like the no nonsense pricing, right? Superhuman, which is like an email thing, they charge $30 per month with no trial, but they say that, it's going to be really good, basically, right? So you've got to make sure that if you're charging up front, like I said earlier, there is some immediate value with the tool, right? Now, community builders, so people who are building a movement, they are saying that, get on and try it for free. And then you're hopefully going to like it so much that you'll become a part of the community and it'll become part of your life, right? So Figma's free tier for indie designers, it fuels this sort of viral adoption, right? Discord does the same. They have a free community thing. And then, if you want to use premium tools, you have to upgrade. These products thrive on this habit formation, right? They embed themselves into your daily sort of workflow, and then you don't want to switch because there's too much effort and you've started liking the product too much, right? Now, my approach, both of my tools work, right? And they use different models, right? So Comb, trycomb.com, there's immediate value, right? You pay $67 and then you get the thing that was promised on the landing page, right? With Sia, there's a compound value. So the reason I give you 7 days as a trial, I give these customers and I say, look, go and use it, is because it's not immediately valuable, guys. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it not being immediately valuable and people being like, what the hell's going on here, right? I've got a lot of support, a lot of videos and stuff like that in the app so people know what's going on, but users need time to trust that this tool is going to work. And the best part is, if they don't like it, they just cancel. There's a big cancel button right there. And I'm not ashamed to say that people cancel. Like, that's great. I'm glad people can't cancel. On Stripe, I have this thing that it asks them a reason why, and they just say, oh yeah, I didn't really find what I needed. I'm like, fantastic, man. Like, I'm glad you tried it out. I'm glad you gave me feedback, and now I'm going to go back and code some stuff to make it better, right? As Sam Altman notes, startups are a race to find equilibrium between value capture and growth, right? So in other words, can you grow sustainably and can you convince customers to give you money in your own way whilst also providing them value? So is that in the form of a free trial where they get loads of help, or is it just demanding that they pay up front? You've got to consider these things, right? Now, the 2025 playbook, so for pricing, right? So how to build a product with pricing. You've got to map the aha moment, guys. So in other words, when a user logs in, when do they get that wow factor from the product, right? If value is delivered within like 10 minutes, then you can probably try charging up front, right? If value requires effort over time elapsed, like say 3 days to 10 years, right? Well, like 10 years is ridiculous, but say a month, then offer trials, right? Like it's okay. So SIA, it takes ages for them to get some stuff from it. So that's fine. Audit marginal costs, right? So if you have high costs per customer, use trials cautiously. You can use usage caps, right? So for example, with SIA on the free trial, they can only get something like 100 leads because that cost me, it cost me a lot of money to generate them, right? If there's low costs, and you can afford to get loads of trials, then consider building that community aspect, like start a Discord group or a Slack channel or a Facebook group and start talking about like how it can form a habit around their life, like a to-do list app or like a, say if you're building something like a project management app or things like that, right? A community app. These kinds of things are things that, they drive habit formation. And you can be generous with trials because they're going to be long-term customers, right? Engineer frictionless onboarding, right? So if you are running trials, you've got to make sure that they know what's going on in the app. So for the first couple of months of SIA, people were just churning immediately because they were like, what the hell's going on here, right? And that was me engineering an app badly. I was like, okay, people don't know what they're doing, so let's make sure that they know where they're going and what's going on, right? So make sure that they get a lot of support. There's a lot of videos in the app. Make sure you have like a chat widget so they can ask you questions or email you or DM you, right? And then you can have a progress bar that says you're almost done with this or done with that, right? I have this thing on SIA where there's a very, very clear like green icon that says click here first and then click there and then click there, right? And progress bars are really good. Like Duolingo uses it, although that's not like a SaaS, it's more like an app, right? It says like, well done, you've done this today, right? You can just gamify it and make it like fun for people to get to the value. Remember that there's a road to value, and we've got to make sure that that road to value is clear. And then iterate, guys. Aim for a 40% trial conversion. So if 100 people sign up to your free trial, 40 of them should ideally be at least, converting into a paid user, right? So 40 of them. And keep trial costs below around 20% of what they're going to be charged in the end, right? So if you don't know this, then just try and keep it as low as possible, guys. Like if we don't know how much it's going to cost you to run a customer through a free trial, then try and keep the initial costs as low as possible by adding like usage caps and things like that, right? Now, final thoughts, pricing is not a one-time choice, right? It's this sort of living component, right? And if you have assumptions about what will work and what won't without actually testing anything, then you will fail, right? So Peter Thiel said, all failed companies are the same. They don't escape the gravity of their own assumptions. So run a 30-day test, guys, free trial versus paid, right? Let data, not like assumptions, guide you. And in the end, the right model will be very clear to you guys, because I tried to do payment up front for SIA and no one signed up in the first 30 days. I then said, look, 7-day free trial, try it out. And the first week I got something like 65 trials, and a pretty big portion of those from the first month are still with me, guys. So that's the whole point of iterating, right? In the end, the right model aligns with your product value mechanics, how fast someone gets value from it, and then your users' willingness to trust you and pay you and that kind of thing, all right? So any questions, guys, give me a shout, drop them below, but I'll see you in the next one, all right?